Hey everybody, I'll try to keep this video short since the one I did on Monday was 20 minutes long, which I did not intend for it to be. It just kind of ended up being that way, and I apologize. So for those of you who tuned in on Monday, you know that we talked about story arcs and briefly about physical and emotional arcs. Sorry, I'm trying to turn it so you guys can see everything. And we talked about the basic story arc and then the arc that's really good for if you're plotting a novel, and that's probably a bit more accurate to long novels. So today I told you guys that I would talk a little bit about my plot arc specifically for Among the Sands, which I did not write. I feel like I should write that on here. So let me do that, and you guys can watch me just like butcher my backwards writing. Oh, that S is backwards for you guys. All these S's are backwards. No, they're not. Yeah, they are. Wait. Hang on. Sorry. No, they're not. I'm just crazy. Writing backwards messes with your brain. Okay. Sorry. All right. Among the Sands. Okay, yeah. See, I'm practicing. I promise I'm getting better. Anyway, so this is my the basic story arc for Among the Sands. I know it looks a lot like these, but that's because these are basic story arcs. So you start again with, you have a beginning. And the beginning of the book follows Greet. So I'm going to turn you over this way. You guys are kind of moving down my wall. Greet, who is our main protagonist. And then this is our secondary main protagonist, Naresh, who she actually doesn't meet until quite a bit later. But no, she meets him pretty early on. So you have a little bit of rising action here, but it's really not enough to really mark it. Because then you quickly are put into the instigating incident. Which, the instigating incident in Among the Sands, like I talked about on Monday, is one where she has a choice. She has a choice to decide whether she wants to step through the doorway that is presented, or if she wants to stay in the room that she's always been in. And in this case, it's, does she want to go live in the Citadel, or does she want to stay at home with her family and in her community? There are benefits, not just for her, but for her family, for her to go live in the Citadel. But she is given the choice. She does make the choice between the Citadel and her family. And that sounds bad right now. Like, why would you choose to go live somewhere else without your family? That makes no sense. But it makes sense in the story. I promise. It's a better choice for her family, for her to go live in the Citadel. And so that is her instigating incident, and she chooses it. We talked about on Monday about the difference between having your character choose versus pushing your character into a choice, and how it creates tension later. And that's part of it. There is a crisis. In reality, my story arc looks way more like this one, but I didn't want to go into like super details because I don't want to talk about the entire arc and then you guys know what the novel's about and it's not a surprise later and it's not, anyway. And it becomes important later that she made the choice to move to the Citadel. So that's her instigating incident, is she's presented with you can move to the Citadel and live there, but you will live there for the rest of your life. You cannot come back. And so that is her instigating incident. So then you have some rising action, which is number 3. See, that's how I'm labeling all of these so that you guys can follow along. You have some more rising action. There's some plot that happens. And there's some minor crises. There's some minor crises that happen in here, but again, they weren't enough for me to note it. The 7 here is for crisis. And if you look at this traditional story arc, like we talked about on Monday, it does not have a crisis on there. The crisis is in this one, which is in that story arcs, normally when you're writing them and you have the rising action, that you use the crises to raise the action and to raise the tension and to bring your characters towards the climax of the story. Someone's watching. Who's watching? Oh, you're not watching anymore. Someone was watching. I don't know who it was, but thanks for watching for a little bit. I don't know who you were. I was going to tell you hi. If you get on and you are watching, tell me hi. Because I like to tell you guys hi and talk to you. But anyway, so this is the major crisis. There's one major crisis that happens in the plot that could completely alter the choice that Greet has made, and not in a good way. Because, like I said before, she can't go home, and so it could be a big problem. But they conquer that, and so it's almost like this is gonna sound funny, a mini climax, and because it's such a big crisis. So then you see a little bit of the falling action and stuff kind of coming back into normal, but then it skyrockets again. And so let's talk a little bit about this first part of the plot in relation to our characters, because you see the falling action and then everything coming into normal here, and I could talk about that, but in reality, that's very, very little of the book. So this is going to be most of the story. This is where most of the plotting is, and so this is what I'm going to talk about. I'm not really going to talk about these here, because these are a very, very small part of the story. So let's go ahead and scooch you back over here a little bit. And the characters that we talked about, so the ones I'm going to talk about are Naresh, who is the secondary, not the secondary, he's the second primary protagonist. You have Greet, who is the primary protagonist. Sorry, you can see all this stuff that I wrote on these because I was practicing writing backwards. But anyway, and then you have Lasharo, who is a secondary. He's like a legit secondary protagonist, and Becca, who's Greet's sister, who is also a secondary protagonist. So let's talk real quick about where they fit into this plot line that I have going on. So we've kind of taken a look at here, and then Greet's presented with her choice, and it's right up in here, in this rising action here, is actually where she first meets Naresh. And then in here, up here is the first real big crisis that her and Naresh face together. And this is kind of what that is and what that looks like, is about there. Actually, I probably should have put it up higher. But anyway, there's a big crisis that her and Naresh face together, and they overcome it. And Becca's seen a little bit down in the beginning, obviously because Greet lives with her family and Becca's her sister. But after that, you don't really see Becca again until you kind of come into this second major chunk of rising action, and that's also when Lasharo comes in. And Lasharo is important because he becomes pivotal in this climax. Basically, this would not exist if Lasharo had not come into the picture, and if he had not come in. And he's not an antagonist in that sense, but he presents a need that only Naresh can meet, and in Naresh's choice to meet that need, the characters are led down the road that takes them to the climax. So, Lasharo is integral to the plot, as well as Becca. Because Becca becomes a lot of the driving force that takes place in the climax, to resolve it and to bring it back down. And so you can see our protagonists moving through this, and they hit to the climax, and then, like I said, the rest of this is really short. So, to recap, you see Becca and Greet living in their family. They have their little family unit, and you see that in the beginning. And then she meets Naresh, technically. And then you have your choice that Becca is faced with. Go live in the Citadel or stay at home with your family, but once you choose to live in the Citadel, you cannot come back. And you can't choose to live at the Citadel anytime. It has to be now. And that's the kind of choice that she has here. So then you have the rising action, and then you have and Naresh is involved in the rising action, and then you have your first big crisis that Greet and Naresh encounter. And they overcome that, and then you have your a little bit of falling action because it feels like things are normalizing. And then this is when Lasharo comes in. And Lasharo, like I said, is the one who sets them on the path towards the climax. So then Lasharo and Becca kind of come back into the picture. And then this just continues to climb and continues to climb until you get to the climax, in which Becca and Lasharo are both integral into resolving. And so you can see how the 4 protagonists are involved. And yeah. So that's my basic plot. I know it doesn't, like, you guys are probably like, that's great, what's it about? I mean, I can't tell you a whole lot about it. I think on Friday I'm going to read you, like, the hook, which is, like, what you would, like, your 1 or 2 sentence hook that is like, oh, yeah, I'll read a blurb about that. The blurb is, like, what's on the back of a book or on the inside sleeve. So I think I'll probably read my hook to you guys about this plot. And then I think I'm also going to read my blurb for you, because I have both of those written, I believe. If not, I'll work on them. And I will read you those, and we will talk maybe a little bit about physical or emotional arcs. I'm not positive. We'll see. So, yeah, so that's the basic plot for Among the Sands. There's a lot more little kind of hick-em-ups that come along in here. And again, the fact that this was a choice kind of becomes a thing at some point, where people are like, hey, you know, it kind of sucks that you made that choice and that this is what you chose. And it does impact her relationships with people and impacts her life in both positive and negative ways because of the choice that she made. So, again, I hammered it in last time, I'm hammering it in this time. It is important to make sure your character has to make a choice. You can thrust them into it and give them no choice, but it doesn't add as much tension to the story. So, yeah. Hope you all enjoy, and you have a wonderful night, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye.